About 2 million years ago, somewhere in East Africa, a fire started by accident. Lightning, maybe a spark from stone, and something dropped into it meat, root, something raw, and came out changed. Nobody planned it. Nobody understood what happened. But something in that burnt, softened food did something to the creature that ate it. Something so powerful, it eventually turned that creature into you. Right now, you can walk into a kitchen, turn a dial, and have fire on command in 2 seconds. You don't think about it, it's just how food happens. But for the vast majority of the time animals have existed on this planet, nothing on Earth cooked its food. Not one species. Every animal that has ever lived before us ate everything exactly the way nature made it raw, tough, and full of energy your body couldn't actually access. So let's start with your body, because it doesn't make sense. Your gut is about 60% smaller than it should be for a primate your size. Your brain, meanwhile, burns roughly 20% of your daily energy, despite being about 2% of your body weight. Neither of those numbers works for a wild animal eating raw food. In 1995, anthropologists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler proposed something called the expensive tissue hypothesis. Their argument brains and guts are both metabolically expensive organs, and an animal's body can't afford to grow both at once. If the brain gets bigger, something else has to shrink to cover the cost. In humans, that something was the gut. But that raises an obvious problem. A smaller gut means less digestion. Less digestion means less energy extracted from food. So, how did our ancestors grow a bigger brain while getting worse at digesting? The answer, according to primatologist Richard Wrangham, is that they stopped digesting raw food and started eating food that had already been half digested for them by fire. Here's what cooking actually does that most people never think about. It's not just about taste or safety. Heat breaks down tough plant fibers and denatures proteins before they ever reach your stomach. Chimpanzees, our closest living relative, spend up to 6 hours a day just chewing raw food to survive. 6 hours every single day, just to get enough calories to stay alive. Cooked food gives you the same calories, sometimes more, in a fraction of the chewing time and a fraction of the digestive effort. Your gut doesn't have to work as hard, so it doesn't have to be as big. And the energy that used to go toward digestion could suddenly go somewhere else. Your brain. The problem is proving when this actually started. Fire doesn't leave a skeleton behind, it leaves ash, and ash blows away or washes out over hundreds of thousands of years. So, archaeologists had to go looking for something more stubborn than ash. In 2012, researchers excavating Wonderwork Cave in South Africa found burned bone fragments and ashed plant remains buried deep inside the cave, dated to roughly 1 million years ago. Because the site is a cave and not open air, wind and rain couldn't have carried the fire in from somewhere else. Something, or someone, brought fire inside and used it there, deliberately, 1 million years ago. At a site called Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, archaeologists found clusters of burned flint and wood dated to around 790,000 years ago, arranged in a way that suggested repeated, controlled use in the same spot over time. Not a single lucky fire, a habit. And Rankham's argument goes back further still, all the way to Homo erectus, around 1.8 million years ago. This is exactly when the fossil record shows smaller teeth, weaker jaw muscles, a shrinking gut, and a brain that had started rapidly increasing in size. All four changes happening together in a species that had no business affording any of them on a raw diet. Now, here's where most people get the story wrong. You'd assume cooking started because raw meat was dangerous, full of parasites and bacteria that could kill you. That's part of it, sure, but if safety were the main driver, cooking should have started with meat first, since raw meat is the most dangerous raw food there is. Instead, the evidence suggests something more basic, something almost boring by comparison. Early hominins weren't trying to avoid getting sick. They were trying to get more calories out of the same amount of food in less time with less physical effort. Survival math, not caution. And once you understand that, something else falls into place. Cooking isn't just a nutritional upgrade, it's a scheduling revolution. If you're not spending 6 hours a day chewing raw plants, you suddenly have 6 hours you didn't have before. Time to make tools. Time to travel further. Time to sit around a fire at night with other members of your group, doing something no primate before you had ever really done. Nothing. Just sitting, talking, watching flames. Some anthropologists argue this newly created downtime, sitting around a fire after dark, is where complex social bonding and even early storytelling began. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because cooking accidentally handed early humans hours of free time every single day for the first time in the history of life on Earth. So here's the full picture. About 2 million years ago, something changed in a species that had never controlled fire before. Their jaws got weaker because they didn't need to grind raw food anymore. Their guts got smaller because cooked food did some of digestion's work in advance. Their brains got bigger because all that saved energy had to go somewhere, and it went there. And their days got longer, not in hours, but in what those hours could be used for. You do this every day without a second thought. You heat something up, you eat it, you move on with your life. But that simple act, standing at a stove for 10 minutes, is running on a foundation your ancestors spent nearly 2 million years building by accident, one burnt root at a time. You're not just making dinner. You're using an invention so old, so foundational, that it's the reason you have a brain large enough to wonder where dinner came from in the first place. And if a burnt root 2 million years ago could build the brain you're using right now, imagine what's still hiding in the next thing we assume we already understand. That's exactly what the next video is about. Subscribe so you don't miss it.